So Lucian, when I called my industrial analyst to learn about what Honeywell does, and she told me they have a lot of products and a lot of divisions. And that typically, sounds to me that there is massive amount of opportunity to improve profitability, improve productivity. So what all have you been doing in that area?
Yeah, look, we're a controls company in general. So if you look at what we do, we measure, we sense, then we sell a control system, and then over time, we derive more and more value from that. So AI, certainly, I think everybody said it now, it's not new. That science, that principle of creating an install base, getting leverage from it is not new. So we do that for our customers. We just now, with AI, can do it faster, can do it better, can do it more efficiently. We do the same thing to ourselves. So I think if you think in an industrial setting, what are some of the obvious things you can do? If you have a very complex supply chain, a very complex value chain, I think everybody's heard of chip shortage. So how do you build better tools on basic things like clear to build? So how do you look into your forecasts? How do you use predictive tools to predict demand on a very fragmented supply chain base? How do you go backwards? Then another simple one is how do you run your physical inventories? No longer are the days with a clipboard and going around and looking for boxes. You can actually use machine vision. You can use a drone that flies around your warehouse and does physical inventories all the time. Again, we sit here being fearing job loss. I don't know who wants that job to go in and scan the boxes in the labor shortage that we have today versus the accuracy of doing that real time and not having all the write-offs. So I could go on with examples, but I can tell you that our mindset is we wouldn't sell something to a customer that we don't try ourselves first. And so somebody was talking about earlier drinking their own champagne. I like that statement, and that's really what we do also as Honeywell.
Great. Sarah, Fidelity, everybody knows Fidelity. I'm sure in my earlier years I've applied a few times for a job also. But when you look at, is Gen AI a new tool in the fintech industry? And how are financial firms using it today?
So generative AI is not new. It's been around for a long time. I would say, though, for many of us in AI, it was when we saw GPT-3 in 2020, the previous version of ChatGPT, that we realized something remarkable was happening. We didn't expect it to be this good at all. None of us, not even anyone in AI. Or most of us. So that's really when many of us started thinking about it. And obviously, with the release of ChatGPT, there was a lot more excitement, and a lot of companies in the financial services space are really thinking about, how do you use a tool that's not completely accurate? That's pretty much the number one question. And so it's really thinking about it as a first human-in-the-loop internal tool. Right, like everybody was saying, test it out on your employees, but also have a human in the loop so that you could really, if there is a problem, somebody can change things and fix it up. And so that's really the way most financial services firms are looking at this technology. There's so many ways to make employees more efficient, whether it's with coding and having a development tool, or even helping somebody search through large amounts of content, even with a tool that's not completely accurate.
Fair. So we started off with talking about how Gen AI can help you improve productivity internally. Now, how are you employing it so that your clients at the end, who are the final consumers of those products, how are they getting the benefit of that? Or what are you working on that we see as an outsider?
Yeah. So from my perspective, we are an infrastructure company. We build the tools for people to develop solutions, applications on top of this, and we do both hardware and software. And so on the software side, we're making it easier. On the hardware side, together with software, we're making things run fast, much faster over there. So because of the capabilities that we've been developing, we have been working with a lot of clients, actually, a lot of customers, and they're seeing all kinds of interesting AI applications. And if I can mention one, it was always pretty intriguing, which is ordering burgers. I'm not sure how many of you eating burgers nowadays. When you do a drive-through, it used to be you have to talk to a person. So now actually they have a conversational AI that can actually handle the burger ordering seamlessly, right? And so that's one end of this. And the other end is we also been working with national labs, looking at the very large-scale model training to do for science. 1 trillion parameter models. Actually, it's local. It's Argonne National Lab. It's not a secret, right? It's local in Chicago here. So anything in between, we've seen all kinds of applications. On the medical healthcare side, we're seeing people using better radiology because the image processing and all these things. So because of the nature of our company, I guess we are supporting all kinds of use cases. And as part of my job, I was lucky to be able to talk to a lot of different people and very different use cases, all the way from the Fortune 500 big companies all the way to the smaller companies, where it's more interesting to go to the smaller companies because we believe in AI everywhere. AI will be everywhere. When you go down to the smaller companies, quite often they don't have a data scientist team, right? The big companies, they can afford to have an AI team, data scientist team. And the small companies, they have a lot of data. They just don't have enough AI expertise to do this thing here, right? So as part of our job, my team's job as well as the community, the AI overall software community, to make it easy for people to create all these applications here.
Cool. So Debika, for you, sometimes when I'm going home, I'll just go to the Verizon chatbot and try to reduce my bill with them. What are some of the other applications that the client would see?
How did that work for you?
It's actually went up. So
profitability.
Right.
So what are some of the applications that a client would see that Verizon's working on?
Yeah, so actually Verizon, it's a very interesting time. I think in one of the previous panels, we mentioned that this is a generational opportunity. As a company that builds networks, and we think about the massive amounts of data that now has to be transferred, securely across different parts, from your endpoints, to different devices, to your data centers, to the hyperscalers. Network companies are in the center of it all. And by some stroke of luck, looking back, we'll say we had, this great idea a few years before its time, but we actually built compute and storage into the network itself. So as we think about AI applications as they roll out, the training models, I think, will still be in the hyperscaler clusters. But as we look at inferencing and starting to bring some of that closer to the user and starting to look at more real-time applications, especially for Gen AI, a network that already has that in it is very powerful. So we've already started seeing very interesting use cases. I'll just say one very quickly, because I was only talking to the CIO last week. It's a used car company. I won't mention the name, but they buy and sell used cars. Now, every used car is unique. New cars, they're similar to others, but every used car is unique. But digitally, based on all the information they get, the history, the maintenance history, the year, the location, and and if you want to sell it, you can take pictures, right? Upload it, you get a price right away without anybody having seen that car. Uses a massive amounts of AI from all the different data sources, the picture that is uploaded using our 5G network, and all of it can yield to a dynamic price that's personalized for that individual at that location at that time, right? So those are the types of use cases that can be facilitated and enabled by having a network like what Verizon has. So it's a very exciting time for us being in the center, of this AI evolution.
So used car salesman going away, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Lucian, what about yourself? How's the end Honeywell client? What are they seeing out there?
Yeah, I think, as I said, once you have that install base, the value that you can create is pretty significant. And I can give industrial examples, and maybe some of the room will gloss over. So let me try with a consumer example that's pretty straightforward. So we sell, for example, electrical meters, thanks to our partner, Verizon. Actually, they're now 5G enabled. So no more truck pulling up in front of your house, fighting your dog for access to the meter. The meter is 5G. It can communicate to the utility. That's a pretty basic thing. But that is the install base. That's really where AI really begins. Now that meter transmits a certain amount of information to the utility. It transmits consumption, but there's also a usage pattern. You disaggregate that data with good analytics. You can actually tell when the air conditioner started, when the EV got plugged in, what is the buying habit, what is the consumption habit. It allows the utility to price electricity differently based on peak demand. It allows then the consumer to have an app on the other side where you can drive choices with the consumer. So it really allows value creation on both sides, and ultimately, what does it allow from a societal standpoint? Is it more effective utilization of the power grid? In the end, we know that we are in an energy shortage overall. We talk about green energy or more traditional legacy energy, but in the end, we need more energy as we move forward because middle class is emerging, more consumption is coming from that around the world. Data centers consume a lot of electricity. We have EVs in our garages, so there is more need. So utilizing the infrastructure that we have more effectively just creates value from everybody. Same goes for the water infrastructure, the smart water meters. We do that as well. Same thing goes for gas. So really optimizing the network on the utility space is just one simple use case of what we do.
And Sarah, for you, in what ways financial firms can serve their customers better? Like, where do we see the potential there?
Sure. So one area that really excites me is thinking about financial literacy and how complicated it is today to really get a good understanding of finance in general and specifics as well. And I really think a good generative AI tool could help customers learn and understand more before they meet with a human advisor. And I think I've been talking about personalization in AI. We all have for so many years. But it was when I first started using generative AI as an education tool that I finally felt like I saw true individualized personalization. You can ask to explain something with a metaphor. You can ask to explain something as a fifth grader, as a college student, based on a certain amount of knowledge that you have or don't have. And so really every customer could learn in their own way and really then have a much more informed discussion with their advisor later on. The other thing that I really see that could really help customers is thinking about like front-end interface. Today, it could be very hard to go to a financial services website and find what you're looking for. And I kind of see this as when Google was first released, the thing that we all loved about it was that it was just a text box. It was so simple. And I think this could really be transformative when it comes to interfaces. We could just have a text box. No one needs to know how to navigate the page. They can just say, okay, I want to see how my fund is doing compared to the S&P. And they don't need to know how to find that. It'll just bring it up. And so I think that can also really simplify the customer experience.
Throughout news and, everything written and videos, we see all sorts of different things that can happen. But you guys actually sit with people who are coming and selling you technology products and stuff. So let me start with you, Debika. What are the 2 or 3 different things that you are so most excited about in terms of technology innovations that you think is going to change even more from where we are right now?
Yeah, and I think similar to Sarah, I think especially with generative AI right now, I think it's going to actually transform the telecom industry in some ways because there's, you're talking about complexity in the financial investing and that side of it. There's also a lot of complexity in telecom. You're talking about, trying to, reduce the size of your bill. But if you think about it, there's so many different price plans, which is the right one for you. If you think about other services, there's so much optionality. We ask a lot of questions, and I think it's okay to have complexity, but it's not okay to expose complexity to your end users. And I think that is going to be such a huge change in how we interact with things. You don't have to be a subject matter expert, whether it's in buying Verizon services or buying financial services or buying other services. It's just that ease of use. I sometimes use car analogies, and one of them is you don't have to understand how your car actually works, but you can get in and drive it, right? And if there's something goes wrong, you're told what to do. Like, how do we bring our industries to that level of simplicity so that the user doesn't need to know, and ask the right questions and do the extra research and, it's sort of done for you. And my goal is to have our industry transformed that way over the next few years.
People must be pitching new technologies to you all the time. What excites you?
Yeah, they're pitching to us, and we do new technologies ourselves also. So I think there are 2 things that look very interesting here. One is we continue to push the boundary of artificial intelligence in the sense of AI performance, and we are seeing people doing bigger and bigger models, and these things become smarter and smarter. But the second thing I think probably not only equally important, probably more interesting to me is we can apply these intelligence in a more efficient fashion. So you don't need to have a 1 trillion parameter model everywhere for your use. And quite often what we do is 7 billion parameter model. And these are very effective. When you take this relatively smaller model, you can fine tune with your own data. You can run it more efficiently. And nowadays, we can run it all the way with a laptop. You can run these things, right? So I think that's an exciting future where we can enable the entire world with all kinds of smart things going on here.
Okay. Your industry is obviously very complicated. And I remember the days when I used to write about IoT and, all that stuff. So what is it that excites you about the next generation of technology?
I think I would start with even today's generation of technologies because they're grossly underused. I think if we look at customers in general, if we did a survey ourselves, and a super high percentage, 80+%, are interested in adopting AI. 70% think it would be revolutionary over a pretty short period of time. But then a very high percentage of people are piloting the use of AI. So I think we've done a poor job of explaining it. I think we've overhyped it a little bit as if it's something new. Just imagine going to your doctor and the news is, I'm going to use AI to help diagnose you. That's scary. Well, guess what? They've been using it for a long time. It's not new, but I think we tend to induce that. So first and foremost, I think it's driving the usage of existing technologies. I think if I look ahead in the short term, what we haven't talked a lot about is there's a very significant workforce shortage. On one hand, you get questions, what happens when AI replaces all the jobs? And on the other hand, we can't get pilots, we can't get chemical operators, we can't get just about anybody, and we're afraid we're going to destroy all the jobs. So it's a bit of a dichotomy where we want societally exactly the perfect amount of AI to improve exactly the perfect amount of productivity. But there's a lot it can do. So to answer your question specifically, everybody's talking about a co-pilot. And there's a co-pilot that is probabilistic in nature. So it's probabilistic AI that is mostly going to be right advising you. And then you get into the field of deterministic AI, where you actually have to run a refinery, land an airplane, do something that has to be right with 99 point lots of nines after the 9% of the time. So now how do you take the subject matter expertise, the first principles, along with all the data analytics, and also ultimately the software there, and how do you drive that decision making? And we see those tools. We have a new product called Operations Copilot. This allows an operator in an industrial environment to have the benefit of all the experience of the people before him or her right beside them. They're still the ones running the machine, but ultimately they have a copilot here. At some point, you'll have that in the friendly skies as well. And at some point, we've talked about earlier, it'll be in a car. And so that all will make us all more productive. That will make us all safer. That will improve a lot of, somebody was talking about improving life expectancy. We really didn't think about that until today, to be honest with you. But I think the benefits way, way, way outweigh what we're worried about now, that this being the one technology revolution in the history of man that will be negative as a disruptor. Most of the ones so far have actually improved the quality of life. I don't see any reason why AI wouldn't as well, but I think there's more ground to be plowed here.
Yeah, that leads me to a question for you, Sarah. Like, when we talked, there was a whole discussion about kind of the barriers and the limitation of why are people afraid of embracing it right now. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there are so many limitations, and one of them is the fact that it could hallucinate, that you just don't know what you're going to get, even if it's 90+% of the time it's accurate. What happens that other percent of the time? The other is there's a lot of legal questions still pending to be determined. What about the fact that they use training data to create these models that maybe they weren't allowed to use? And so those still need to be ironed out. And so that also makes people a little bit wary about using the technology. There's also the potential of regulations, and nobody knows exactly how those regulations are going to look. And then I guess another limitation is some of these companies may not know, can I trust my data and give my data to this company that's creating this LLM that might be great for me? And so that's another thing that companies have to be consider and be cautious about. And so there's definitely still a lot of barriers to go through when you're looking at this technology.
Let's take a question from the audience. This is open for anybody who wants to answer. Otherwise, I have a few more. Do you prefer in-house GPUs and data centers or renting services as such? So anybody wants to comment?
I can start. Do you want
No, go ahead.
I think actually it's a combination. We do, based on the use case, and it's not, one LLM doesn't fit all. It's not a one size fits all. So for different use cases, we've seen that there are different models, different LLMs, different inferencing models. So based on the use case, there's some of it, whether it's in one of our partners with Google, like in GCP or other places, and then also within Verizon and our own data center. So it really depends on the use case. The answer in our case is both.
Good. All right. So let me just ask one last question. Perhaps, Sarah, you could enlighten us about it. How do you improve the quality of the AI results?
So, one thing that was mentioned in some of the earlier sessions is about this RAG, and basically using your own data first in conjunction with search technology, so that then you can really make sure that it's answering based on your data. It's much less likely to say something inaccurate. And it also could have more updated information, because you could update that as much as you want. These models, so I guess I forgot to mention this in the limitations, it's really expensive to create these models, so they don't have real-time information. They're not updated that often, and so that also can help you. And so that's really one approach that a lot of companies are looking at to try to overcome some of the limitations.
Last one for you, Wei. In the same context, on the on-device piece of it, then how do you, I guess, embed data at the same time on the chip level? I mean, the model, and then how you train it over there.
Yeah, so we continue to see progress both in terms of hardware side and the software side. And the hardware capabilities continue to improve in terms of amount of compute capabilities we can have everywhere, all the way from supercomputers that we're supporting, all the way to the smaller devices over there. So I think the world will change quite a bit. And the other thing I mentioned earlier is on the software side, you need to be able to fine tune it. And actually today, pick a smaller model with fine tuning. Quite often, that's actually better than a generic big model, which analogy wise, you may have a undergrad or high school graduate who knows a little bit of everything, but you need a PhD who is specialized in something which is very deep, right? So you can actually have different trade-offs here, and you can do a variety of things here. And if you as Debika said earlier, the use cases are all very different, right? Depending on the use case, you may run into different issues here or there, and it's like we keep talking about a car analogy. When I started driving, I had to learn stick shift, right? And over time, you have auto transmission, and you have a self-driving car at some point. So depending on what use case you have, you may end up picking one of these.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's time for us. Thank you.
Thank you.